So my name is Hani Kamalapati. Welcome to the session, and hopefully you're having a good time at Build. And we're almost closed. So my name is Hani Kamalapati again. This is a very introductory session. And if you're expecting advanced content, probably this session may not be for you. So I have with me Jennifer Marsman and Adam Gracholski. We are part of the V team that produces the content for the Android resources section on dev.windows.com, which is generally known as Windows Dev Center. So how many of you, probably I can't say you guys. Some of you already, the fact that you're here means you already developed applications for Android. So our focus for the next 60 minutes is to show you that Windows and Android have a lot of similarities, especially in terms of application development for the store applications. And you know, Adam, at the end, you know, Jennifer and I are going to speak, and Adam will come back up on the stage and take any questions you may have. Adam, thank you very much, sir.
Could we get a quick count? How many people have developed an Android application before? Our big Android. How many people have one published in a store, an app store? Awesome. Very cool. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. So we picked a few topics that we thought will be interesting to developers. So we'll start with the architecture and show you that Android and Windows 8 are not that different, especially when you look at the user interface, navigation, and dealing with data on the applications. But also, having published application to Android, probably A and R might be very familiar to you, especially when you try to lock the UI thread by doing a lot of work in the UI thread. I think both the platforms offer you decent asynchronous programming capabilities. I think we'll show you side by side how those look like. And then Windows 8 offers you a unique way of sharing applications, the data with other applications. You know, we have something called a shared charm. And this is somewhat almost similar to Android implicit intents. And then once we talk about sharing, then we'll show you a few certification tips and then showcase Windows Store relative to Google Play. And then at the end, we'll take a few questions if there is time. Let's start with the architecture. Windows 8 is, when I say Windows 8, I'm referring to Windows 8 and 8.1 in general. So Windows 8 is based on successful Windows operating system. And it offers at the level a certain core service like file system, networking, driver model, both user mode and kernel mode, and also security, and which is used by the brand new runtime we created for Windows 8, which is called WinRT. And at the core of WinRT is the application model, so which allows you to create like touch-enabled, Chrome-less, fast and fluid application model, which also allows you to run your applications that come from the store in a security sandbox. And also gives you a variety of lifecycle management events so that the programmer can take advantage of the state management of the application. You know, when the application is foreground, application goes to background, application gets terminated. Between all these states, in order for you to guarantee user experience, you get to plug in your code. And the WinRT provides you a lot of APIs, and generally, there's a lot of consistency between the APIs offered by both the platforms. And these APIs are available in multiple programming environments. Like if you are a web developer, you had to do in Java and XML layout language, you probably can come back to your web development. And you can style your application in HTML, or rather you lay out your application in HTML, style it in CSS, and then handle the end user actions in JavaScript. And the JavaScript, all the APIs that are available to other environments are available to JavaScript as well. And if you like managed programming, like most Android programmers generally build using Java, so you are very familiar with the managed environments. So you can develop in C# or even VB. If you want to go back to those old VB6 days and come back to .NET using VB, you can do that. And C# and VB, when you combine with XAML, which stands for Extensible Application Markup Language, will run in a common language runtime virtual machine so that you don't have to do memory management, which is equivalent to Dalvik virtual machine for Java on the Android side. Again, if you're an old-timer like me, you may get a kick out of doing C++. You can combine C++ with XAML and then program your way to the Windows Store applications. And what I did not show on the slide is the DirectX programming. You can combine C++ with DirectX for game programming. And you can build store applications. When you build a store application, you will publish it to Windows 8 Store or Windows Store, which gets downloaded by the consumers either to x86 or Intel or ARM devices and just make money for you. And having decided to build applications to Windows Store, it is only natural to wonder what the environments stack up. So Android allows you to build for using multiple operating systems, whereas Windows 8, you need a Windows 8 operating system for both building and testing the application. And if Windows client is not your mainstream operating system, or you don't use it on a regular basis for your work, you have two options. One, you could do a side-by-side booting, and the other option is to run it as a virtual machine using either VirtualBox or one of those clients. You can get a 90-day eval copy from Microsoft.com and then install it using one of those two options. And then IDE plays a big role in time to market of your applications. And Android allows you, out of the many IDEs Android allows you, including the Android Studio, which I did not show on the slide, Eclipse seems to be the most popular one among the developers. And you build Windows 8, Windows Store applications. I keep using Windows 8 and Windows Store interchangeably, so I hope you mentally translated. What I mean is Windows Store applications in the context of this talk. But you could also build desktop applications, which are the traditional applications deployed to, with Chrome and close and minimize and all those. So Visual Studio comes in a free flavor. You don't have to buy Visual Studio enough for you to get started building applications. So Visual Studio Express for Windows 8 is the one you should be downloading. And along with it comes the Blend, which is the designer-centric tool so that you can express your creativity through that tool. Visual Studio 2012 also comes in other flavors, which is Professional, Premium, and also Ultimate. If you are a Microsoft Developer Network subscriber, you can go to MSDN subscriber website and download those. And if you are obviously, Android developers, the natural transition path will be towards XAML and C#, given the similarities of C# and Java. They almost, it was pretty easy for me to switch when I started programming for C#. So when you try to switch the dev environment, it's almost like taking a different life form, right? The culture-wise and the way you think, the way the concepts are in old platform to new platform, it can pose some friction. So here is a simple map of the terminology. In Android, you happily code away with your activities and fragments, and you probably extend views and view groups. And in Windows 8, it is all pages. You create page, you navigate between pages, you transfer data from one base to the other. So almost it's similar to activity. And then activity like it's a container of views and view groups. Windows 8 is a container of controls. And in the Android side, you call widgets and we call controls. And in addition to the ones that can be displayable on the screen, there are also layout controls based on panels, like your relative layout, and we have similar layouts. And then there is a stack panel which has the equivalent layout on the Android side. And we do event handling using delegates. It's almost similar to observer interfaces you have. But you have Visual Studio helps you wiring up those events much, much easier way. And obviously, every application requires some kind of reusable controls and libraries. And reusable user interface controls can be done by extending user control and creating your own controls. And if you want to do a more fundamental level, you can inherit from the control and start programming your way. It's all inheriting from control and creating your own user controls is almost similar to extending from you and do all the work yourself in terms of displaying the actual widgets there. And obviously, controls contribute a whole lot to your productivity. I recall the days of Java when I was drawing pixel by pixel to show the file system explorer. and you no longer have to do that. So both the platforms offer you more or less similar set of controls for displaying text and selecting one option out of many, and layout controls, displaying lists. So they're almost similar. Windows 8.1, a couple of days back, added a few other controls like the hub to use the hub pattern, and the flyout, command bar, and hyperlink, or a few extras Windows 8 has. I'm sure there are like a zillion of clock controls on the Android side. But Microsoft cultivated a huge control ecosystem. And if your application has such a need that you can't find a control out of the box, you should be able to pick one from one of the vendors and finish your application. If we look at XML, so every modern platform generally gives you a declarative component as well as an imperative component. So a declarative component on the Android side, obviously you might be using, or not might be, you probably are using XML. So for a simple application, let's say a fictitious application called learning management, you see a simple screen on the left-hand side and the corresponding markup on the right. And there are a few anonymous controls, and there are a few named controls, and also see that the event handler is attached within the markup itself. So the corresponding imperative code must be very familiar to you. So I have inherited from activity and created a subedit activity, and I had to declare the references and then acquire those references by using the lookup with the IDs generated when I compiled it. And then finally, I'm using those in the on-click handler to save that information either to the local database or to a remote network. So there's a lot of boilerplate code there. And so Windows 8 allows you you don't have to write all of that boilerplate code because of the automation put in place in Visual Studio. So the markup looks remarkably similar. Essentially, it's a canonical representation of the object structure. And since I'm representing the same object structure in both the markups, there shouldn't be any reason why they should be different other than the naming differences. The text view is called text block. Edit text is text box. And the event handler is attached to the button on click. It's almost similar way. So the code is a lot simpler. You no longer have to write that for 4 named controls translated to 8 lines of code on the server just to get object references. So because of the loosely coupled awareness of the XAML and the code behind, which is C# in this case, the Visual Studio Templates does a lot of magic under the covers for you. And one other important factor, like I had troubles with, is the simulator. In Windows 8 gives you a high-performance simulator. It runs natively on the box. In fact, it is a remote desktop view into the actual desktop you log into. And you could do touch and gestures. You could do orientation, multiple resolution, set a fake location, and then test location-specific functionality in your application. But also, a couple of days back, we announced the new functionality within the simulator, which is the network simulation. You'll be able to set up roaming settings, no roaming. Also, you can set up various states of data. Cap it at my data bandwidth, or I'm close to my data bandwidth, so do the throttling as appropriately. Those settings, you'll be able to set it up in the simulator. So let's take a quick demo of the application. Let me switch to the demo machine. So I have Visual Studio here. Let me start Visual Studio, and then I'll create a new project. So our project is merely, it takes a URL of the image and sets it as a background. So let's call it app. Let's leave it as app 3 and put it in my delivery. And there are several templates here, blank app, grid app, and there are several templates which Jennifer is going to talk a little later in the slide. So I'm using a blank app, which gives me a project structure. And we have app 1, which is the project, and there's an assets directory. One thing I would like to mention is the references here. You could use .NET if you're programming for C# or VB.NET. And Windows Store allows you to have a subset of .NET available to you automatically. So that profile is automatically referenced here, and also the entire WinRT SDK through metadata as C# projection has already been added for me. And if I want to look at what the contents of it, I simply double-click, and it should come up pretty quickly. You can look at all the APIs. You can navigate to them and find out what definitions are there in each control. And then assets, it is similar to Android RES directory, especially in the Eclipse side. So this is where you dump all your images and any other resources. And moving on to this common directory is generally for styles. The extensible markup language allows you to define styles pretty much like CSS, externalize them and reference those styles in as many widgets as you like if you want some kind of similar look and feel. Finally, app.xaml, similar to Android application, that is responsible for bootstrapping my application. App.xaml finds out, in this case, it instantiates main page class, which is generated for me in main page.xaml and the corresponding code behind file. So this is similar to main activity default Android templates generate for you. So let me double-click on XAML, and it's loading in the designer. So one thing, so you see a toolbox on the left-hand side, and then also Solution Explorer on the right hand, and another one is Document Outline, which is very, very important, especially if you're designing complex screens, like overlaid the panels and controls. You'll be able to use Document Outline to explore the structure and manipulate those. For example, you might be able to turn off the entire set of controls and then design the controls underneath them and turn them back on so that your application will be complete. So let me rename this grid to root grid. So you can work with the document outline, or you could go back into the properties pane and then work with those. So I need a text box. Let me go back to my examine controls and pick a text box. Let me change my size to 33 so that you all can see it. Let me stretch it as far as I can go. And then I need a button. And let me change the button's caption to get image. And then change the caption, change the size to, let's say, 24. I hope you can see it. Or let me make it 36. And then now what I need to do, I need to attach a click handler. So the loosely coupled awareness of XAML with the code behind allows you to generate something like this automatically. And now I have a snippet which I'll bring it. Go back to Visual Studio and then paste it here. So what it's doing, I'm creating an image brush which is equivalent to Android's drawable resource. And from the image brush, I'm creating a bitmap image. Bitmap image, there's a squiggly underneath it. And that squiggly, let me go fix that. And we need to include a namespace. So it's complaining about my text box not named appropriately. Let me go and name my text box to TBURL. And we should be able to run the application now. As simple as that. So let me get my a URL, an image URL. So if you like Jeep, if you like cars, paste it there, and then set the image to the background. And so I did not have to write in a networking code all of the network client creation and then fetching the stream, constructing the image, all of that is done for me automatically. And if you like a Porsche, that's as simple as that. So now you can easily debug it, set a breakpoint. run it, and paste the URL. So you could debug away. You can see the locals, and you can see immediate window where you can show expressions. So it's a much nicer experience than what I had in developing for non-Windows platforms. Jennifer, now control back to you. Talk about Android intents on navigation.
All right, thank you, Hanu. Now let's transition over to navigation. As Android developers, the paradigm for Android development is that for each screen in your application, you have an activity defined in your layout. And so we have, to navigate between these activities, you can start an activity using an explicit intent, where you're essentially passing in the activity that you want to start. And with that, you can also pass in various data. So if I were to input some user data in my activity 1, I could then pass it and then use it somehow in my activity 2 if I wanted to. And then at the end, if I wanted to transition back, I could call activity2.finish explicitly, which would transition me back. Or I could use just the built-in back button on Android device, which would do the same thing. Now, conceptually, this is exactly the same at a conceptual level in Windows 8. So instead of, but some of the details are a little different. Instead of an activity, we have a concept of page in Windows 8. So there's an actual page class that you can utilize to define the screens in your application. And then there's another class called frame. And frame allows you to construct a frame and then navigate between them. So using my frame.navigate, I can transition between pages, and I can also pass data between pages as well, just like we could in Android. And then when I'm done doing whatever work I want to do in my page 2, I could transition back to page 1. And the frame keeps a navigational history, a backstack, that you can utilize. So I can call frame.goback, and it will pop me one up the backstack and take me back to page 1. And then, of course, I could always use frame.navigate to navigate to another page as well. So let's take a look at what the code might look like for this. This is my code for inside of page 1. In page 1, I've wired up an event handler to my next button to allow me to navigate to my next page. And it's just a matter of a simple this.frame.navigate, and I pass in the type of the page that I want to navigate to. So this will cause me to navigate to page 2. And then I'm also passing in some data that I want to pass. So I have, I'm pulling out of a text box the text field, so the actual text that the user input. And then on my page 2, there's 2 things. First of all, I have an onNavigated to. This is automatically invoked as part of the application lifecycle management whenever the page is about to be displayed in a new frame. And so what I'm doing here is some basic error checking on my navigational arguments. And then I'm pulling out the data that was passed in and then displaying it in a text box or something like that. Now, do note in this code that I'm explicitly casting it to a string. So that means that my target page has to know the type of data that's being passed in so it can cast appropriately. And then at the bottom, I have some code to wire up a back button. So when the user clicks the back button, we're going to do some quick error checking to see if the frame can go back. Is there anything on the back stack? And then if there is, we'll go back. All right, so let's look at a quick demo here. Thanks, yep, I got it. All right, so I'm going to go and open up a new project. And this is actually a Windows 8 rather than a Windows 8.1 project. I'm going to get rid of the source control. But the reason I wanted to show it to you is it's a project called the Contoso Cookbook. And I love this code base because it's available for you as a hands-on lab. And so when you're first learning Windows 8 as kind of an intro to Windows 8, this is an awesome way to learn Windows 8 really well, because it basically starts you from File New, and then you go in and you add Windows components like one by one. So you see, how do I add the share charm? How do I add search? How do I add live tile support? One by one, and then by the end, you've built a pretty cool Windows 8 app. And so there's only so much you can learn from PowerPoint, right? So actually getting your hands dirty and coding is, I think, a great way to learn. So anyway, I will give you a link to this at the end, so you're welcome to download this and try it out yourself if you want. All right, so let me first run it and just kind of show you the navigational structure of this app. So of course, right before lunch, I'm going to throw like pictures of like awesome mouth-watering food up at you. So what we have here is the Contoso Cookbook, and it is categorized by various ethnicities of food. So we have Chinese food here, French food, German food, Indian food, Italian food, and Mexican food. That all looks so good. And so what I can do is I can actually click on any of these category headings, such as Mexican, and then that gives me Mexico pinpointed on a little map, as well as some information about Mexican cuisine. And then I also have all of those same Mexican recipes available to me from here. So I could click them from that main hub page, or I could kind of browse the category and click on any of them from in here as well. So let me click on, for example, taco salad. We'll check out this taco salad recipe. 70 minutes! Oh my gosh, who has 70 minutes to make a salad? This must be a really good salad, because I would never take 70 minutes to make a salad. But anyway, so now we have, we're looking at our specific recipe. And what we can do is let's take a look at the navigation. So we know in the back stack we have two things, because I was at the main hub level, and then I looked at the category level, and now I'm down all the way at the recipe level. So if I click back right here, what I do is take me back to the category level, and then all the way back up to the main hub, as one would expect. So let's look at the code for that real quick. All right. So the first thing I want to show you, here is the item detail page. So this is the recipe, down deep in the recipe level. So when we saw that specific taco salad recipe page, this was the page that we were on. And if we look through this code, let me do a quick find here. Yeah, so here is our button right here. And in this button, what we have displayed, how come this is not showing up right here? What we have here in this back button is we can show its named back button, and this is the button that's across the top of the page that we clicked. And you can see for this click handler, we have go back all wired up. And if we jump here, you will see that go back method. Now, really quick, there is some navigational help available for you. So if you're coding Windows 8 applications, there is something found in the common folder called a layout-aware page. And sort of, instead of using that page class that I mentioned, layout-aware page derives from page, and then it contains some built-in support for you, like navigational support and other things as well. So for building Windows 8 apps, great, you can use this. Now in Windows 8.1, we've tried to make it even better, and there's a class or a helper class called Navigational Helper. So it's a slightly different thing, but either way, whether you're developing for Windows 8 or Windows 8.1, you can look in this common folder, and there's some starter stuff to help you get started if you want to use it. So here we have this built-in navigational support, and you can see we have something like Go Home, which does look at the frame, does an error checking, make sure there is a frame, and then we'll go back as far as possible. If there is something in the back stack, then go back. So it'll take you all the way back to your home screen or your main screen. Then we also have the go back. This is what we actually called. And you can see, again, we're just doing some quick error checking to make sure that there actually is a frame and that there is something on the frame that we can go back, and then we'll go back, navigate back once. And then we have the same logic for going forward as well. So there's a lot of nice things to get you started. It has that code already written in there for you. OK, let me jump back. We saw navigation. And then the other thing that we saw was an example of the grid template. All right. So when you click File New as kind of a new Windows developer, there's a whole bunch of projects in there and a bunch of project templates. And these are great to get you started with Windows 8 development. They, of course, create the project for you, have all references wired up nicely, and have the nice things that Hanu already showed earlier. Now, when Hanu did his first demo, he started with that blank app template. And so let's take a quick look at those 4 first templates, the blank app, grid app, hub app, and split app. I'll dive into those a little bit. And then note, too, that there's a whole lot of other stuff available. There's class libraries if you want to share code between various apps. There is unit testing support. All of that good stuff is available as well. All right, so the first app template is the blank application. And the blank application essentially starts you with a clean slate. You have nice blank thing, and then you can drag and drop controls as you please. And just to look at the code that's generated, this is the file structure that you'll see in Visual Studio in the Solution Explorer. And so this blank page that you see actually maps to that main page .xaml that's included here. And then all the other stuff is the stuff that Hanu's already gone over, the assets, the common folders as well. App.xaml contains your entry point, which will load a new main page. And then there's the package.appx manifest, which is very similar to the Android manifest.xml that you guys are used to from Android. It contains similar things, metadata about your project, the concept of permissions that you have in Android. We have the same thing in Windows called capabilities, but it's very, very similar. All right, the next application is called the grid application. Now, the Contoso Cookbook application that I just demoed earlier, I purposely chose that one to give you a great example of a grid application. So remember, we had all of those various recipes. So really, our main content of the application was a whole bunch of different recipes or items. And then those items were all categorized into groups. Remember the ethnicities of food, the French food and Indian food, et cetera. So those are our groups. And then at the very top level, we had that main page, or that nice hub that we saw. So when you get a grid app, you get a lot of that already built in for you. Specifically, you will get these files and folders. And then the very first screen that you get, that hub, looks something like this, the little image in the bottom right-hand corner. And that main hub actually corresponds to the grouped items page.xaml. Just so when you see these files for the first time, you're like, what exactly goes with what? The groups map to this group detail page. So that was the page I navigated to when we looked at the cuisine of Mexico that showed the little map and such of Mexico. And then finally, the lowest level, that's what showed the actual recipe. So that's when we saw our outrageous 70-minute taco salad right there. All right, there's one other app called the Split app, very, very similar to the Grid app in that you should use it when you want to display data that can be easily grouped into categories, just like we saw before. But in this one, the layout looks a little different. There's a very similar main page that you see here, and that main page maps to the items page.xaml in this particular template. And then the difference on this one is that in this one, it's a more concise app, I guess you could say, where the groups and the items are displayed on one page together. There's a split page where for a single group, it displays all of the items in that group. And then as you click on one of the items in that list on the left-hand side, it'll display the actual item detail on the right-hand side in kind of a master detail setup. OK, and then finally, there was a new template added in Windows 8.1 called the Hub application. And the Hub app is, again, good for when you have data that can be easily grouped into categories. And for this one, we have a slightly different main page. So if you look at this one, the main page is mapped to, in the templates, this hub page.xaml. And if you look at the picture right there, it actually is kind of a little bit of a more exciting template where it gives you lots of different looks and feels there, different images of different sizes and such. So if you've ever used the built-in Windows 8 app, the News app or the Bing app too, I think, they both use a format like this where you can have a hero image at the beginning and then various other sections in different layouts as you like. Then we have our groups. And our groups, again, like the categories of food, map to section page. And then finally, down at the item level, it's an items page. And that one is pretty much blank, so it gives you a lot of flexibility to do what you want with that. All right, and then I'll hand it back to Hanu to talk about data.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Yeah, I mean, today's store applications generally have to deal with the data, one shape or the form. Either you may have an application like a learning management, which we talked earlier, which requires a lot of data to be pulled in from the server or some other cloud service, or you might be integrating your application with, let's say, social networking, sucking down all the content, either photos and tweets or what have you. So generally, when you build a data-driven application, you probably have something like a domain model, which is highly normalized, related to each other entities based on the domain, how the domain concepts are laid out. And if you are really using some kind of service-oriented model, you probably have a message-oriented message model, which is optimized for efficient network transmission. But nonetheless, those models, either the messaging model or a domain model, or on one end of the spectrum, and then you have the user interface on the other side, there exists this, the gap in terms of how to transform these into the actual aggregated data that can be seen by the user. So in Windows Store development, we use something called view models. So view models are essentially a bridge between the user interface and the actual domain models. So in this case, my domain model might contain like a subject, a task, and then a schedule, which might tell me also some metadata about task in terms of how many tasks I completed. So let's say I have something like a learning subject, which is an item of a view model. And if you want to display it on Android, you probably end up in creating an array list of those learning subjects. And then if you don't like the default adapter rendering behavior, you probably end up in customizing an array adapter, create your own adapter. And then prior to wiring the adapter with the, let's say, an activity, you probably have to inherit from a list activity, drop a list on it, and then set list adapter so that you can see the data. So in the Windows 8 side, the creation of the view model and the corresponding objects are effort more or less same. And then you create an enumerable list of those items which you want to display, and drop a list view on the canvas, and then attach it using an item source, and that automatically takes care of rendering for you. Whatever work you put in creating the adapter in the imperative side of the application, you design your template as to how these items need to be rendered on the markup side so that you have clean separation between the processing logic and the actual layout. So let's take a quick demo of that. Switching to my demo machine. Let me close the project solution and open an existing project. So in order to save time, I'm opening up an application which I already built. It's a very simple application. Its goal is to display a list of subjects. And I have my XAML. If I were to run it, you will see the actual list of items. And these items, I can click on it, and then if I were to attach a command bar, then when I right-click the command, or when I click on this, you could program it in such a way that the command bar drops down, and then you could do certain actions on it. So that's very simple. Let's see what it takes to show something like this. So change it to 50%. First, let me get rid of something called a data context. Data context allows you to comment it. Now the data goes away at the design time. So data context kind of allows you to wire up static data sources and display it when you design your screens away. So and then once you have the data context in place, let me undo that. I have something called a list view, which is called LV subject list. That subject list has various items in it, and a list view resources, and also an item template. It is the item template that picks up the rendering logic from a resource dictionary which I already defined inline. So that resource is subject list template, and then that subject list template is defined inline with the list view under list view.resources section. So essentially, I designed my template with a name, and it has 3 columns, and it has an image with thumbnail URI, and also it is bound to something called subject name. We don't know yet. The list view doesn't know what object is providing the data. It's merely a text expression, or also subject list. So what happens at runtime, the rendering engine looks at hierarchically, is there a data context attached at the page level? And if so, is there something like a subject list? And then it will interrogate, and is there a property called thumbnail URI? And then it walks through and then builds the actual content tree. And I have a simple view model which has the subject list property. And this subject list, when I render it, gets picked up. And if I don't like, now let's say having designed it, let me get rid of my data context. Going back to XAML, I can get rid of the data context, comment away, and then let me run it. So nothing is coming through. right? It's by design. So let me go back to, let me simulate actual real programming. So I'll go back and I'll populate list items, subject list dot items source. Equal to new learning subject view model, and then I would like to pick up the property subject list. And that will, so once I design it, I can plug in my production data sources here. And then we should see the actual data again. So that's as simple, the data binding is that simple. So you have a declarative component, clean separation between declarative data binding logic and the actual imperative code. So let me flip back to my PowerPoint. And ANRs, there's a way to avoid ANRs, application not responsive pop-ups in Android using async task. You create an async task and you write, let's say for a function like a downloading file, you create file download task and provide necessary functions to run code in the background as well as on the UI thread. And in Windows 8 side, we use a declarative asynchronous programming model supported by the language itself. So in Windows 8, if you are doing a network I/O or disk I/O, you can't do any other way other than asynchronous. Our APIs are all asynchronous. And you have opportunity to create asynchronous API if you were to be doing some kind of like CPU, heavy CPU work, you might think will be blocking the UI thread. So the code is pretty simple to read. In fact, if you look at the Android download file, this entire big chunk is being run on the background thread, where in this case, it's each statement. That particular piece only runs on the UI thread. I'm sorry, in the background thread, it comes back to UI thread, and then whenever it encounters another await, it goes back to background thread comes back. So all of this thing is hidden for you. We create a state machine, and anything, let's say whenever an await is encountered, the control is written back to the caller, and we will remember, we'll wrap this entire code in a callback handler. And next time when it encounters another await, there will be another callback handler wrapper. So if you were to be programming this with callback handlers, in order for you to complete the entire processing in a sequence, you probably will have 4 callback handlers with each one chained to each other. And when the final callback is done, you're done with the display. So Windows Store programming nicely hides all of that thing from you. So it's nice to read. When you debug it, under debugger, since you complete the calls almost synchronously, you will flow through in a natural way. So let's take a quick walkthrough of how that code looks like. Thank you, Jennifer. Let me close this solution and open another. So it has a screen. Let me change it to 50% or 33%, maybe better.
That's good.
So essentially, it picks, NASA publishes a feed called Image of the Day, and we are essentially picking up the image as though we did earlier in the first demo. We're setting the URL of the image to the image tag. And the another option is we download it, save it to the local file, and then reference it from the local file. So I'll show you how that works. So let's run it on local machine. Now I'm doing get image. So it's an aircraft carrying one of those solar probes for launch, I suppose. Let me reset it back, and then I'm downloading it. So you don't see it, because the network is so fast, you probably don't see it. Let me show you. But in fact, all of that code was running asynchronously. Let me go back and show you. Introduce some asynchronous delay here. Everything is asynchronous in Windows 8. Let's say task await task dot delay. Let me delay by 4 seconds. Now run it. Get image works fine. reset it, now download it, so it's working. While the clock is running, your UI is responsive. You probably could up a spinner, a progress bar, anything like that. I mean, so you did not have to write any of the boilerplate code in order for you to program an asynchronous model. And the way the code works, let me get rid of the delay, and let me put breakpoint, and run it. Click download. So I'm getting a feed. Extracting the URL of the image from the feed, creating HTTP client, opening up a read stream to the image, creating file in local storage folder. So everything happens sequentially. There's no jumping around like it happens in a typical callback handler mode. And then I'm returning it. So it's as simple as that. So now, Jennifer, back to you. Switching to the PowerPoint machine.
All right, thanks, Anu. So now I want to transition and talk a little bit about sharing. Sharing is a Windows 8 concept that doesn't really have a one-to-one correlation with anything in Android, but the closest thing is probably the concept of implicit intents. So in an Android application, perhaps you have an Android app that sends a piece of mail, and you don't care what application the user uses to send that particular piece of mail. What you can do is use an implicit intent and then provide an action. Here's what I want to do. And then the system will surface a UI to the end user that says, OK, choose between these options of various options that are registered on the system to be able to send mail. So that's implicit intents in Android, as you well know. So in Windows 8, we have, this is probably the most similar thing. It's a concept of sharing. And in sharing, we have a share source and a share target. So a share source is some interesting source of data that has the ability to package up data and send it to another application. And then share targets are the other side of that can accept various pieces of data. And you can explicitly say what types of data you want to send. You can have unformatted text, formatted text, links or URIs, images, files, and you can also define your own custom sharing types as well. So I can kind of give you this thing, but I think it's easier to actually just show you. So let me jump real quick to the demo machine and give you a quick demo of sharing. I'm going to jump here, and I'm going to very selfishly open up an application that I wrote. This is an application that's available in the Windows Store today. It's called Reveal a Picture. And I wrote it for my daughter, who's like a 3-year-old. And it's partially to teach mouse manipulation skills. So you know how little kids are always doing this because they reach the bottom and they haven't quite figured out the mouse yet? Well, what this does is it sucks in some pictures from your My Pictures directory, and then it chooses a random one and displays it there. So then they can go like, oh, cool, it's me, or oh, it's us on Christmas, or whatever thing, and they're really excited to like find a picture of themselves or whatever. So this is a picture of one of my daughters. And you can unveil the picture, and then there's a little happy thing at the end. So one of the other capabilities this application has is the ability to share that picture out. So, oh, maybe I haven't run across this picture in a while, and I think it's kind of cool, and I want to tweet it, or I want to email it to my mother-in-law, or something like that. What I can do is use the share charm. So I'm going to hit Windows C to invoke the charms bar, and you can see the second charm is this share charm right here. So when I click the share charm, that will take that picture, and what it's doing is it's actually sending, under the covers, what is happening is the operating system sends an event to whatever the current screen is there. So since my application is up, it will send it to my app, and it's an event called data requested. My application is going to package up a data package, and it's going to include both the text stream of where, like the URL, the path to this picture on disk in text, and it also provides the actual image. So then, what I'm going to do is, so I click that sent the event, that sends the data package back to the operating system. And now what the operating system does is look at all of the share targets that are registered on my machine to see which ones can accept the types of data that I am sharing out. And you can see there's a number of different options here. And one of them is a cool little game called Puzzle Touch. So I'm going to actually share there. And you can see, so here's our target application. It actually shows some UI and can do some stuff. And you as a user can actually interact with the UI too. It doesn't have to disappear right away. There's the option for you as the end user to interact with it. but then control is transferred back to the source application. So I end up still back on my source app. All right? But you'll see that if we go over here and launch Puzzle Touch, that a new puzzle will have been created with the picture that we passed in. And so there's some settings you can use or tweak in Puzzle Touch, but then it generates a brand new picture, and you can put together a picture of whatever you want to do right there. And there's nice little clicky noises when they go together. All right, did you guys just want to watch me play this for the rest of the time? All right, I'm sorry, let's go back. So back to the desktop. Let's actually look at some code to do this. This guy. So we just saw the demo. Now we're going to look at some code of what would I need to do in order to actually make this happen. So this is our page, our source application. So in our source application, in the constructor, I am registering for sharing. And the way I do that is by getting a new data transfer manager, just from the current view, and then I wire up an event handler to that data requested event. That's the event that we receive from the operating system, letting us know that the user has pressed the share charm. Then, in my event handler that I've wired up here, I am grabbing from the event args this data package, request.data. And in my request.data, you see there's a couple of properties there, so I'm able to set metadata about the data that I'm sharing, so like a title and a description of what exactly it is that I'm sharing out here. And then you have the ability to set the actual stuff in the data package. So in this case, we're just setting text. In my application, it would be set bitmap or set image to set an image out there. OK, so I am passing out some data like so. Now, if we transition to the target application, we see two different methods here that I want to call out. Or actually, I'm sorry, just one that's called another. But in our typical MVVM, these are typically live in different places, so we kept them separate in the slides. First, there's an onShare target activated method. And so that gets invoked when I've shared something out, and then it launches the target application. That target application wasn't necessarily running before. So this serves as the entry point into the application when it's invoked from the share charm. So that onShare activated will get called when I invoked it from share. So as a target app, it would point that out, and it would have a specific share page, which was that small page that you saw that says, oh, your puzzle is being generated, something like that. And so I'm invoking that page and activating it so that the user can see it. And then within there, I'm just simply accessing from the event args, that text. So I'm getting the text asynchronously, and then setting the Windows context back to what it was. And then I can asynchronously go off and on the UI thread, I'm dispatching it back to the UI thread. I can set that text in a text box or whatever I want to do. All right. So one of the last things we wanted to talk about is the Windows stores and the certification process. As an Android developer, most of you guys have maybe published to Google Play or one of the other Android stores that are out there. And the process is a little different, is one of the other kind of big changes, I think, for an Android developer. As an Android developer, you're used to a direct publish process. So you submit your app, and it goes live. In the Windows Store, we're a little bit closer to the Apple model in that we do also have a certification process. And during the certification process, a human being will actually look at your app and test it for various things. So to kind of give you a high-level overview of what you might do, you do need a Microsoft account in order to do this. And your Microsoft ID, kind of the evolution of Live ID, is just an email address. It's free to set up. You can register any email address you want. It's very, very simple and easy. And then secondly, you will have to register for the Windows Store using that Microsoft account. The registration does have a fee associated with it. There's an annual fee. I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. And then finally, once you're registered for the store, you have the ability to reserve app names. So if you want to grab the names that you're using on the Android market, at that point you can do so and make sure that those are reserved in the Windows store, even if you haven't finished your app yet. Then the next thing we have to do is implement the app. And you can do that in parallel with these other steps. You can actually download Visual Studio Express, free download, for Windows 8, and start coding today. You don't necessarily have to be registered for the store to start coding. So you implement your app, and you've reserved your app names. And then once those things are done and your app is written and tested and is looking pretty good, what you can do is create an app package right from within Visual Studio. And then that app package is what gets uploaded to the Windows Store. And then it's sent to the Windows Store, and it undergoes 6 main certification requirements that we have right now. And they'll look at a number of things, making sure it works the way you say it's going to work. Make sure that there's no offensive content in it, or that you do have support for keyboard and mouse and touch and all of those things. So it'll go through all those certifications. If there are no issues at all, you'll receive an email that says, congratulations, your app is in the store, and it'll give you a link to your app published in the store. If there are any errors, it will tell you exactly what you will also receive an email, and in that email, it will specify exactly what certification issue or certification requirement was an issue. And so you can look at that and be like, okay, and then go back and make the fix and resubmit. And since the certification process is a little different in Windows, I just wanted to give you guys some quick hints and tips for getting it through quickly. There's other sessions, so do check out the other sessions on that. And then there's an article at the bottom. This is very high level, so I recommend checking out that link at the bottom, which gives a kind of much more in-depth look at these certification requirements and some of the top failures that we see, so that you can know what they are and be ready for them and fix them before you even submit. But 2 things I do want to call out right now. Number 1 is run the Windows App Certification Kit. So this will get installed on your machine as a free download when you download that Visual Studio Express for Windows 8. Totally free. It comes with that. And what it does is it's a set of automated tests that you can run on your application, the same set of tests that will be run as part of the Windows certification process. And so you know that if you get those all passing on your own machine, then hopefully at least that same subset of tests that's run during the certification process will also pass there as well. So that gives you a little bit more confidence when you submit. So, and then if not, it shortens your wait time, because you don't have to wait to get the result back in failure. So you can fix it and then submit very quickly. And then finally, the other one I wanted to call out is the bottom one, provide a privacy policy. So if your application connects to the internet at all, you need to have a privacy policy available on a website somewhere that the user can look at before they download the app to see what you're going to do with the data. And so that's all you need to do, is specify, if you're connected to the internet, what is being sent over the internet. And just say no personal information is being sent. So there's more information on how to do that at that link. All right, and then finally, a quick comparison of Windows Store versus Google Play. And again, I highly recommend that you check out the link at the bottom for a lot more depth on this. But some of the main considerations, Google Play uses the industry standard of, as a developer, you get 70% of the revenue, and the App Store keeps 30%. That's what Apple uses as well. And we also do that for new applications in the Windows Store. However, we have one difference in that once your application makes $25,000 US, at that point, we actually reward you for writing an awesome application, and we give you 80% of the revenue share and keep less for ourselves. So I think that's pretty awesome. Another thing that you can do that you can't do through Google Play is that in our infrastructure, in-app purchases are allowed outside of the store infrastructure. So it is totally legal for you to submit an app, and then if there's extra things like for sale within your app, you can reach out to your own servers and you can manage the payment and such of that all through your own infrastructure. In Google Play, you have to go through Google Play to do in-app purchases. And then, of course, if you do your in-app purchases outside of our store infrastructure, you keep 100% of that revenue because it's not going through our infrastructure. We don't know about it. It's all yours. So another kind of big difference. And then there's a number of other things here. It is a $49 annual registration fee for our store, the Windows Store, or $99 for a corporate account. So there you go. Okay, so hopefully you guys have gotten some good information out of this session. What we were trying to do here is just say, okay, what are the very top things that an Android developer would need to know when getting started with Windows 8? And hopefully we've achieved that. There's a whole lot of other things that we didn't get a chance to cover. For example, we have a great push notification service. The Windows push notification service is awesome. If you're using Google Cloud Messaging right now, it's a very similar paradigm. The Windows push notification service does have full support. If you use it with Windows Azure Mobile Services, there's support for Android and iOS and Windows Phone and Windows Store development and web. So it's really, really awesome in that if you're doing cross-platform development with Windows Azure Mobile Services, you have you can do everything really easy as a backend, as a service, all in one place. All right, to get started, you can download Windows 8. There's an evaluation copy available at that link. Again, Visual Studio Express for Windows 8 is a free download. You can grab it from there as well. You can register for your account. We have a great dev portal, great API reference, hundreds, literally hundreds and hundreds of samples in there, and the forums where you can get your questions answered as well. And then finally, so I already mentioned the dev portal and the great samples. Here's the link to the Contoso Cookbook Hands-On Lab, which is a great exercise for just getting yourself comfortable with Windows 8 development. And then I definitely want to call out those resources for Android developers. There's a lot of content that we just put at the beginning of build out on MSDN. And that's absolutely, I think, a great resource because it includes an API mapper that says, OK, if you were using this API in Android, use this one in Windows Store. So it makes it really, really easy for you to get started quickly. Same thing for iOS as well. And then we do have some office hours and online training available through our DPE team. So the office hours are awesome because you can sign up for like a half-an-hour slot with myself or one of my teammates. And so if you just get like totally stuck on something, you can like spend a half an hour chatting with someone. And so it's kind of a nice thing that we're trying out this year. And then there's online training available as well where you can kind of walk through Android development. There's kind of a learning path, actually, if you are a developer on another platform. So you're a good developer, you just do it for other app stores, transitioning to Windows 8. So feel free to check out all of those resources. And do please evaluate this session. You have a chance to win fabulous prizes, which is awesome. And that will help us improve. So if there's good things to say, awesome. If there's bad things to say, please go ahead. It's the only way we learn. All right. Any questions? I think 3 of us can take questions.
Come on up, Adam.
The wonderful Hanu and the fabulous Adam as well will join us.
There you go.
Does anyone have questions?
I understand that Windows 8 provides the capabilities where you can get an access to a particular resource, right, as you mentioned. But like in your app, when you try to access the image from the internet, you didn't configure the internet as a capability. So is that something that's always available to the app?
No, you have to declare in the manifest. Okay. And then application will be given various events in terms of it's over the internet or a cellular network, and depending on that, especially if you need to throttle how to suck your data in, you have to code that yourself using HTTP client.
No, I understand that.
So
but
the reason he didn't need to explicitly go and do that is that by default in that template, the blank app template, there is one capability already checked, and that is the internet one. So that's the only one that's on by default. So internet is checked by default in the blank template.
Okay, understood.
Yeah.
And can you tell me more about like a security model, like in the Android world, you have, like when you download the application, it gets its own user ID and the group ID, and they're thrown in that security sandbox. How does that sandboxing work on the Windows 8 side?
So the question was, how do you compare security sandbox between Android and Windows 8, right? So security sandbox, the application model, as I was mentioning earlier, it provides you a security sandbox. So especially any APIs, you're going outside your application. For example, you're trying to access a disk API or the internet, or everything goes through a broker. So essentially, you are in a sandbox by definition. And the Android, and then every application is installed in the context of a user. That's the traditional Windows user profile. Any data you create will be in the user profile. And there are certain directories you can access outside, like there are known folders, like the music and documents, videos. All of that happen through some kind of pickers, and those it happens at the discretion of the end user.
Right. Those have capabilities associated with them, which are like Android permissions.
I hope that answered the question.
Did I answer it? Okay, great.
I was wondering about the sharing of app or the share contract. So as long as the other app implements that contract, I should be able to share whatever information. Is there any kind of trust or security model around it? Or is it like if I want to use some passwords or tokens across the apps?
Yeah, so there's a way to pass various different types of information. So I'm assuming if you're specifically if you're talking about passwords, There's not a way to pass encrypted information that I know of at this time. There's a way to do like formatted text and unformatted text, so you can certainly pass things like text across, but I wouldn't necessarily, passing a password as text is never a really good idea. So if what you're trying to do is provide similar logged authentication between the same two applications, I think there's probably better ways to do that than using the sharing charm. Like there's other technologies to use for like federation of identity between applications.
Well, so sorry, I didn't mean to take others' time, but just to follow up on that, I mean, federation is all different. It's mostly enterprise-wide back-to-back kind of connections.
Okay.
I mean, I can use OAuth kind of technologies, but do you have sort of what iOS has, like a keychain where you have an encrypted store? I can basically store any credentials or password that I have or tokens I have in there, which can be shared by other applications. Do you have something similar, for example, apps created by the same bundle identifier? I don't know if you have that notion of bundle identifier, which can authenticate different apps to that keychain
Yeah.
or encrypted store.
I'm not familiar with that. Adam, do you know
yeah.
by chance?
Here, run him a microphone. Can you run him the mic, just so it gets on the recording? Yeah.
Yep.
If they do the recording, yeah. Yep.
Point you to the session. So there was a session earlier today on authentication in Windows,
Yeah.
where Karan Beer Singh, he gave the session. He talked about accounts charm. So user can add accounts, and then it's sort of it is. I don't want to call it the key ring or keychain or whatever the technical term you mentioned, but we have this concept of credential locker where user or apps can save credentials and they're encrypted, and then users with the user's consent, apps can then use those saved credentials for authenticating users.
Yeah. And there's I'm sorry, go ahead.
So there's I don't know the session number off the top, but it was today, so you can look it up on authentication and look at the recording later on.
Great, thank you.
The other thing I would say is just there's a ton of crypto APIs too. So I mean, if you want to get together afterwards and chat, like I'm happy to talk through a couple different options that are kind of running through my head for that. But,
Thanks.
yeah.
Hi, I'm Bob Schmerda. I work for Take Care Health Systems. And among other clients, we provide the 100,000 square foot health center that's inside Microsoft headquarters. And we do that for Intel, Cisco, BP, Harley-Davidson, hundreds of clients. We're a division of Walgreens. Well, we have a health fair assessment app that we've coded on iOS that has right now it's not pen aware, but it has a donut representing a person's assessment of health, and we populate that with certain analytics of BMI and cholesterol and healthy habits and things like that, along with the Walgreens motto of be well. And the next area I was thinking about moving that into is something similar to the Samsung Note 2 and other Samsung devices that are pen aware and have a style for the stylus, and to make that more pen aware. Are there similar ways that could be done in Windows 8? Because that would help me solve a big problem. I can't quite put iOS and Android apps in the 100,000 square foot Microsoft Health Center. Can I? You know?
No, you can't. Okay. To summarize that, I think the question was, is there support for stylus and being able to input from a stylus in Windows 8? Okay, and the answer to that is yes.
Yeah,
Did you guys,
it's in there out of the box.
Yeah, it's in there out of the box. So,
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
Because I know there's a device, I think Acer or Asus makes it, where it's a Windows 8 tablet, but it can also run Android apps.
Yeah.
But it'd be kind of cool if I could develop it using like one of the tablets I got here, and
Yeah.
one of them did come, the Surface came with a stylus, but is that similar where the stylus, when you bring it down, it can hover?
So yeah,
Yep.
why don't you, I mean, if you want to come grab one of us afterwards, we're happy to talk through. We can like bring up some of the documentation and stuff
Yep.
and show you some of the stuff. So yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's all
grab-
there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's absolutely all there. It's built in. I mean, right out of the box, you don't have to do much to make it happen. I mean, really anything at all. It's kind of built first for you.
Cool.
Yep.
Because what I'd love to do is go back to Nashville and, on both sides of me are the iOS developers for that wellness app.
Yeah,
I
thank
have a
you,
question. As an Android developer, we have a single API for phone and tablet, and basically it is the same for iOS. And you kind of did not mention the fork. Whenever I'm developing for phone, whenever I'm developing for tablet, what are your recommendations?
So, I'm sorry. So there are ways to share code very well between Windows Phone and Windows 8. At this current moment in time, they are two separate APIs, so it's different things, and we have different stores for Windows Phone and Windows 8, and we have different APIs for Windows 8. But the thing that, can you log in? The thing that I think people don't realize is that there's actually kind of 3 levels that you have. So, like, let me just grab Paint. Sorry, I have to draw here. There's kind of the level of like slate of phone. So we have phone where it's like, here's the iPhone and then here's the Windows Phone, right? That's one level. And then there's another level where it's like, here is your slate. So you have like your Surface RT and your iPad would correspond at that level. But then there's this third level, which is an actual Mac, right? An actual Mac would live right here, and an actual Windows device would live, right here. And so I think it's not necessarily that we don't support all of them. It's just that, like Apple, for example, with iPad and iPhone, have chosen to support like these two you do together, and then this one is its own coding paradigm. And in our world, where here's like our ARM devices and slates and tablets and stuff, we support these two together, and then this kind of has its own paradigm. So both of them have something grouped together, because what's cool about our stuff is that it does all these things that run on ARM and stuff will run on Windows as well. So I know a lot of people kind of, when they think about it, they keep thinking about this, and they forget about that there's actually this part of the equation too, this final column. But some specifically good tips for how to share code well between them. There's a concept of portable class libraries that allow you to share code very easily between them. There's conditional compilation. So you have the ability to use like pound, if and check to see if it's Windows 8, or so if you have very small code differences, that's a good thing to use. And there is also just using the MVVM architecture in general allows you to do things very well. So I wrote a detailed answer on one Stack Overflow once, like to that question. So you can look it up, but there's a whole bunch of information and links in there. I'm happy to provide you the URL. Or I need to make it into a real actual blog post, because I started writing it. You know how you start writing in Stack Overflow and then it starts going, and you're like, oh, I really need to make this a blog post. But
And there actually was a really good session yesterday on sharing code between phone and Windows and the different strategies Jennifer's talking about, kind of going into detail and laying out, well, here's when you should use this approach, and here's when you should use a different approach, because it's not an all or one thing. Portable class libraries are great because they do give you a common code base that you can use, but it is really limited. And sometimes when you need to take advantage of platform-specific features, you need to do things like conditional compilation or linking files in. So I definitely recommend going to Channel 9 and checking out that session as well. I was there. It was excellent.
Yeah, I think for the long term, we are converging. Initially, we have Windows Phone 7, which was totally different from Windows, and now we have a lot of substrate pretty much same. So someday we'll get there. But for now, you have to use some of the techniques described by these guys as, to enhance your maximum reusability between the platforms.
So in Android, we not only the platform can provide the capabilities or permissions, even my apps can decide or define the permissions. And when I expose an API, so my other apps can use that via that permission access. Is there something similar in this? So, on Windows 8 or Windows Phone side?
So essentially, you want to declare your own surface area within the application, expose those APIs?
Yes, so instead of, I may have a database which is being shared between multiple of my own application, but not really, I don't want to expose that database to any third-party application.
Yeah.
Right? So what I can do is I can define something called a permission, which is similar to the capability, and only my apps can access that database. So
Yeah, I think that you have to do it because, so the question was, can I customize or can I custom different permissions so that who can see my data outside my application group, correct?
It could be database, but it could be any,
Yeah,
even
so the
APIs that I'm exposing.
Yeah, in Android you had to do it because you have your application context and then you have global context. There's no in-between ground. For example, let's say you're writing something to an external storage and then it's open to everyone, correct?
Yes.
And in Windows 8, I think by default, no one can see your APIs. For example, if you're writing to a local folder in the context of an application, no other application can see that data.
Even in Android, you have your private space which nobody can access.
Yeah.
I think these are more often like So one of the things we are trying to do is we want to provide third-party and API. So I work in the education space, and we want to create an application where we can provide the APIs to third parties, and they can access our APIs. But we want to control the access of those APIs on the tablet itself.
Yeah, there are ways to do that, certainly in Windows 8 for sure. So you were asking about like permissions and stuff, and if you mean like there's not an ability, like what I was talking about when I was discussing permissions before was the same permissions as the permissions you would find in like your Android manifest.xml file. Yeah, and so we don't have in Windows 8 development right now the ability to define your own capabilities, because our equivalent is capabilities, and no, you can't define your own capabilities at this point. But there are other ways using code to be able to secure your application so that just the people you want can access them.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions? All right, thanks you guys.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Anna.